about climate solutions. She's been a fighter for us in California. She's my senator. She's somebody who I think a lot of people tonight are going to be proud to see her walk out there and make history tonight.
He has to. I agree with Gloria. He has to make the case
That's right.
that
Kamala Harris
is not a stalking horse. She is the vanguard. She is the likely successor. People are looking at both these presidents now as older men, and that this is a serious. These are many times you get a guy say, "Joy, I wish maybe it was these two instead of the two at the head." Well, you may get your wish in this case.
Yeah.
And I think people are looking at this more seriously, and so Mike Pence has to show he's in command, and tone is going to be very important for him because he's going to go after her on her record. He has to do it in a way that doesn't turn people off.
Hey guys, if you guys tuning in, we're live already. We're doing a little preview for 3 minutes. CNN is like talking a lot of nonsense right now. But we're here. Obviously, we're about to start the live debate in a couple minutes. So hang out, guys, for whoever is tuning in right now. We're live on Twitch, on YouTube. Make sure to check out our podcast if you are hearing us. We just released it yesterday night. It's fresh. Go ahead and go and check it out. It's everywhere. Available in iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. Right, Ken? Sure. Kenneth he forgets everything he does one day. So he's like, every day he refreshes his mind. He doesn't remember what he did the previous day. But trust me, we did the debate. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. We're about to go live in a couple minutes.
This tone stuff, in other words, if a black woman, she comes on too strong, oh, she's angry. Comes on too strong, he could come off as sexist. But I think she's going to be able to thread the needle. I think she's done it over and over.
Pence really has to defend Donald Trump. This may be where you and I disagree, Rick, but I think he does have, how many times have we heard Mike Pence say, we stand on his broad shoulders?
Yeah, look,
he said, pointing to her shoulders. We stand on his shoulders, and he's got to defend.
No, if he goes out there and defends Donald Trump like he has for the last 4 years, you can mail this in. Look,
doesn't he have to defend?
Mike Pence is running for president tonight, because the question is not whether these guys are potentially going to be the president. It's when they're going to be the president, right?
Or when they're going to
because these are older men who are not well, and so that if I were Mike, that's how I'd be thinking. I'm running for president right now, and I've got to be my own guy. And if he's out there just apologizing for Trump, number one, he's not going to help himself, and he's not going to help Donald Trump.
What do you think he'll do?
That's very tough. He is the running mate.
Yeah. I understand that.
And he's not at the top of the
ticket. He's got to make the case that Donald Trump didn't effectively make on COVID, and he's got to prosecute the case on Kamala Harris being for stacking the court, for eliminating private health insurance. Those are big issues that he can hammer home.
We're just seconds away. Let's go back to Jake.
Well, we hope that coronavirus is only figuratively present in the debate hall this evening, and not literally present, but it's certainly going to be a major subject, the smog of it all and the administration's mishandling of it, both when it comes to the national response and also to the fact that the White House is a hot spot.
Yeah. Let's just say, seeing those pictures that we just saw, I'm happy to see that it seems that everybody is following the rules this time. They are wearing their masks in their seat, which is a far cry from what we saw last week. But those atmospherics are going to really frame this debate. The job for the Pence side is going to be, how do you get the attention off of COVID and onto some other things? We're getting
with plexiglass right there.
Plexiglass right in front of you. We're already seeing Pence, signaling he's going to be aiming for something that could be a weakness for Kamala Harris. Foreign policy. She's not as experienced in that area as he has become since becoming vice president. So this is going to be a game of cat and mouse here between the two of them.
It will. What's interesting is that in talking to sources in both camps, of course, coronavirus is, as you said, the other, kind of entity on the stage there, unfortunately. And things have changed a lot since the president and his wife and so many other people in the White House have gotten COVID. But when it comes to the substance of what they have been preparing in both sides, it hasn't changed that much. Kamala Harris was always planning on hitting coronavirus incredibly hard, particularly the fact that he is the head of the coronavirus task force. He has culpability. She's going to actually question his competence, of course. And then vice versa. He was always planning on hitting her on her, radical left positions, whether or not that's true, and other things like law and order. And so I think we're going to hear a lot of those issues come up, despite the fact that it feels like we are in such a different world based on everything we've seen this week here in Washington.
And yet I have to say, we are all living through coronavirus, right? We all have kids doing a remote education. We all have parents that we haven't seen in months. And there are questions that Senator Harris could ask Mike Pence that we in the press corps can't get answers to that illustrate how much the White House has not been straight with the American people. Vice President Pence, when did President Trump last test negative? Because that's relevant, because he's been traveling all over the country, including at the debate a week ago in swing state Minnesota and in New Jersey and in swing state Ohio. When did he test negative last? Because that's how we contact trace. Why are you violating CDC guidelines? Why haven't you isolated yourself?
Or why aren't you wearing a mask ever?
Yeah, why don't you wear a mask? You're the head of the coronavirus task force.
Yeah. I do think that, this was brought up a little bit by Kyung La earlier in the program, talking about Kamala Harris as a woman, speaking for women, right? This is the election of this enormous, potentially 30% gender gap. And one of the reasons for that gender gap is the perception among women that this is an irresponsible administration. And you will see Kamala Harris trying to drill into that tonight repeatedly and really tapping into her sense as a stepmom, as an aunt, as a woman herself. That's going to be part of the challenge that Pence is going to have to face. He can't just bat it away. She's going to be representative of that constituency.
And let's throw it back to Wolf.
All right, guys, thank you. The first and only vice presidential debate of 2020 in the shadow of the coronavirus, a very deadly pandemic, and President Trump's own infection. The Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, they are set to take the stage for what is going to be a truly, truly historic exchange, perhaps the most important and significant vice presidential debate in American history, in the midst of a very, very significant crisis election. Here's Susan Page from USA Today.
What were you on, guys?
Good evening. From the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, welcome to the first and only vice presidential debate of 2020. Sponsored by the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm Susan Page of USA Today. It is my honor to moderate this debate, an important part of our democracy. In Kingsbury Hall tonight, we have a small and socially distant audience, and we've taken extra precautions during this pandemic. Among other things, everyone in the audience is required to wear a face mask, and the candidates will be seated 12 feet apart. The audience is enthusiastic about their candidates, but they've agreed to express that enthusiasm only twice, at the end of the debate and now when I introduce the candidates. Please welcome California Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence.
Thank you.
Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete recovery and for the recovery of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus. The two campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for tonight. I'm here to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching. One note, no one in either campaign or at the Commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask.
As I said last time.
This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption by me or the other candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots?
She can be running this one.
A federal mandate to wear masks?
Can she?
What?
You have 2 minutes to respond.
If she messes this up, then she's going to be in some trouble.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne.
Not airborne.
And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said, you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing,
tell the plan.
for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free.
Okay, how?
That is the plan that Joe Biden
That's not even a
has, and that I
plan.
have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that. And frankly, this administration has forfeited their right
She
to
literally
re-election.
told him, they don't have a plan, but
Thank you,
I don't have
Senator
either one.
Vice President Pence, more than 210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is our death rate is 2.5 as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you. And our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China, President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives.
She needs to say that if she wants to win this.
We were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resources and support they needed. And we began, really, before the month of February was out, to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe, will have literally tens of millions of doses of a vaccine before the end of this year. The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way. I mean, quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about. And I think the American people know this is a president who has put the health of America first, and the American people.
Yeah, that's the thing is he can't be acting like that. Not after what Trump did last week.
Thank you, Vice President.
That's probably going to be a negative against them.
Senator Harris, would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country, American lives that have been lost, families that are grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said,
why
didn't y'all tell anybody?
I don't know.
He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
no, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to add, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I'm
speaking.
Yeah, you can have 15 more seconds, and then we'll give the Vice President a chance to respond.
So I want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back? How calm were you when your children couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Thank you, Kamala.
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have
that was a pretty strong statement.
There's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one. And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts and in our prayers.
That's how it looks.
But what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked. That's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made. The reality, if I may finish, Senator, the reality is Dr. Fauci said everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd get through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. And that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also said to us if we did everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice President
now, one
Pence,
life lost is too many, Susan. But the American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their neighbors first, our doctors, our nurses, our first responders.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the American people have done.
Vice President Pence, you were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago. What seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first. And President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day, we surged resources to New Jersey and New York and New Orleans and Detroit. We told the American people what needed to be done, and the American people made the sacrifices. When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality
Kamala
is
Harris
the
has to
work
stay here. It's like,
of the
it
President
wasn't
of
the
the
job of
United
the American
States
people.
goes
It was your
on.
job.
A vacancy on the Supreme
She
Court
could
of the
win this.
United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney
Yes,
Barrett.
thank you, Vice
But
President.
at that, if I may say, that Rose Garden event, there's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested for coronavirus, and it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and I trust the American people to make choices in the best interest of their health. Joe Biden and
I think
Kamala
he's talking
Harris
about the people who doesn't want to wear a
consistently
mask.
talk about mandates, and not just mandates with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care,
Thank you,
the
Vice
Green New
President
Deal, all government control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American people.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker, knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people. So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration.
Man, it's really hard to believe what she's saying.
I mean, they're both fake as hell, but she's saying the right thing.
Yeah, she's saying the right thing.
Yeah.
They need
I can't
to
believe
help
what she's
themselves
saying.
to protect their parents and their
I'm sorry.
children.
Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's fine, I'm Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me. For life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now. If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
There you go.
Vice President Pence, there have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president.
This should be an easy.
One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president
she's doing with the right things. Like, she's kind of killing it right now.
74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on to the issue of
thank you, but I would like to go back because the reality is that
This
we're
is really
going
just
to
a
have
formality
vaccine,
for Wall Street.
Senator, in record time.
Of course.
In unheard
They always
of
are.
time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trials, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you,
he just
stop playing politics with people's lives.
He's
The reality
dirty.
is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save
that's how the cut I said, like,
countless
playing
American
politics
lives.
with people's lives.
Your
That's why
continuous
200,000 people are dead.
undermining of confidence
Yeah, if
in
she
a
said
vaccine
that,
is just,
he'll
it's just
shut this whole thing down.
unacceptable. And let me also say, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009.
My God,
The swine flu arrived
they
in
just
the
don't
United
get it.
States.
Ebola.
Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu, 60 million Americans contracted
How
the
many
swine
people
flu.
died?
If the swine flu had been as lethal as the
days.
coronavirus in 2009,
You should have just cut him
when Joe
off.
Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year.
Just tell her how many people died.
That it was pure
just
luck
say it, man. Just say
they
it.
did,
It'll
quote,
calm this whole
Come
thing
on, I know
down.
she wants to say it. Come on.
wrong.
Just say it.
And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and
Well, that
hollow
was 10
plan,
years
but
ago.
We
Thank
still
you, Vice
learned from it. And I think
Vice
the
President
American
Pence, your
people,
time is
I'm going
up.
to say again, can be proud
Vice President Pence, I'm sorry,
of
your
what
time
we
is
have
up.
done. And Senator, please
Thank you, Vice
stop
President
undermining
Pence.
confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who
We don't
came
care.
to the United States at the
We
age
don't
of 19.
care.
Gave birth to me at the age
We
of 25
don't care.
at
We
Kaiser
still
Hospital in
don't
Oakland,
care.
California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here
No
right
one
now,
cares.
I know would make her proud.
That's a cool
Let's be
story.
looking
Too
down
bad
on
no
her.
one cares.
Joe and I were raised in a very
No
similar
one
way.
cares.
We were raised with
Oh my
values that
God.
were about hard work.
Oh, all right. See you later, Ray. Looks
about
like it's time for you to
the
go.
value and the
Do
dignity
something
of
else.
public service,
Hi.
and about the importance
Because
of
you talk
fighting
about
for the
stuff that I
dignity
don't
of
care
all
about.
people. And I think Joe asked me to
This
serve
is
with him
Kamala Harris. What
because,
else you expect, bro?
I have a
Yeah.
career
All
that
right. See you later,
included
man.
being elected
Oh,
the
wow.
first woman
It was good
to
talking to you.
attorney of San
Wow.
Francisco,
See, he's
where
giving
I
up a
created
review, American.
models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United
Which she
States
did a pretty
Department of
bad
Justice.
job. Okay.
And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners to for-profit
Liar,
colleges that
bro.
were
What the
taking
fuck?
advantage of veterans.
She
And then,
didn't
of course, now
prosecute,
I serve in the United States Senate as
Steve
only the
Mnuchin.
second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I've been in regular receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose, which is about lifting up the American people. And after the 4 years that we have seen of Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released the sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have
Did she ever
misleading
answer the
answers or
question?
refused to answer basic questions about his health.
Yeah, I didn't think so
And my
either.
question to each of you in
And that's why I
turn
left.
is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination.
Thank you.
I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year. And the stakes have never been higher, but I think the choice has never been clear.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond to the same question I ask, which is, do voters have a right to know more detailed health information about presidential candidates and especially about presidents, especially when they're facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely. And that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes. We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000? And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know what is influencing the president's decisions. And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you, or self-interest? So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
But the American people have a president who's a businessman, he's a job creator, who's paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. He's created tens of thousands of American jobs.
Show them taxes.
The president said those public reports are
They like to claim that they pay taxes, but they don't want to.
The president also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice
and
President.
Turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back
taxes. Thank you, Vice President.
Energy, fighting for free and fair trade, and all of that's
thank you,
on the
Vice
line
President.
if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, that's a good segue into our third topic, which is about the economy. This has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this
where Kamala Harris says
we have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate declined to 7.9%
Democrats said they want to keep
September,
cutting taxes, right?
but the job growth had stalled.
They say they're not going to roll back
Trump's.
Trump's.
Round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, Blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker.
No, he doesn't.
And the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for. On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that. He'll invest in infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education.
Who hasn't?
So, for example, for folks
The
who want to go
United
to a 2-year community college,
No, we
it will be
did.
free. If you come from a
We went to the
family
moon
that
first
makes
for a
less than
reason.
That's not
$125,000,
science.
you'll go to a public
Okay,
university.
this
It will be
conversation's
free.
over.
And
It's
across
science
the board,
fiction.
we'll make sure that
Yeah,
if you
you're
have
right.
student loan debt,
Science
it's cut by
fiction.
$10,000. That's
Oh,
what
you're
Joe
one of those
Biden
flat
thinks about
earthers?
the economy, which is it's about investing in
We didn't
the
go to the
people of
moon,
our
we went to the
country,
plate in the
as
sky.
opposed to passing a tax bill, which had the benefit of letting American corporations go offshore to do their business.
Thank you,
You're
Senator
welcome.
Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been predicting a rapid and robust recovery, but the latest economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer, uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. Because when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of four had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, the average household income for a family of four increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think, Susan. I mean, right after a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height, we've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, fought for free and fair trade, and secured $4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families,
to businesses,
save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally
well, this is the weak
no
point of the
expense to
Democratic
help
Party
the
right
American
here,
people in the
because they're not
American
going to admit what the
workforce.
$4 trillion was
Joe
for,
Biden
mostly.
and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy.
And then as a result, the argument is not going to be
$2
strong.
Green New Deal.
Yeah, Kamala's not
which
going to
you
be
were one of
honest
the
about
original
this.
co-sponsors
Yeah.
of in the United States Senate. They want to
75% of that
abolish
tax cut
fossil
went to
fuels
the,
and
not tax
ban
cut, but of
fracking,
the
which would
$4
cost
trillion
hundreds
went to
of
corporations.
thousands of American jobs
Not
all
businesses,
across the heartland.
corporations.
And Joe Biden
Yep.
wants to go back to the economic surrender to
That's
China.
the-
That when
the
we
United
took
States
office,
wave.
half of our
Yeah.
international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth
Thank you,
and opportunity,
Thank you,
4
Vice
more years of President Donald Trump. 2021
Thank
is
you,
going
Vice
to be the
President.
biggest
The
economic year
economic
of the history of
collapse
this
like
country.
twice
Thank you, Vice
already.
President Pence.
I know.
Senator Harris.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000
He said
a
he's going to
year.
repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, it'd
I'm speaking.
be important if you said the truth.
Don't
Joe
let them
Biden
do this to
said
you.
twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is
that's the math.
absolutely not true. That
Is he
tax
only
bill-
cutting? Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then
Please.
have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe
See,
Biden
you
will
see, she
not
doesn't
end
want to tell
fracking.
him about the
He
tax
has been very
bill.
clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who,
Tell them
during
about the tax
the,
bill.
the
Just say,
Great
yo,
Recession,
that
was
tax bill,
responsible
which everyone liked. Remember,
for the
no one
Recovery
liked this,
Act
that tax
that
bill.
brought America
No one
back, and now the
liked that
Trump
tax bill.
Pence administration
All right,
wants
it
to
was.
take
Remember, it was a
credit
Republican tax scam when it came out.
when they rode the coattails
And they just
of
ran
Joe
it
Biden's
because it
success
sounded well for them.
for the economy
Yeah.
that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt. because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but
important.
we need to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage,
if you have anything, we're coming for you.
Senator Harris, thank you.
You're
Let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster.
Yeah.
The American people remember it well. And President Trump and I have a plan to improve healthcare and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American.
That's a lie.
But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender.
Tell them why it's good
is a prescription
to
for
ban fossil
economic
fuel.
decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now will continue with 4 more years of President Donald Trump.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. And our water is among the cleanest in the world.
Oh, my God.
And just a little while ago, the president signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks.
All right.
In 100 years.
But I wouldn't bring up Michigan because that was Obama's fuck up too.
That's what I'm saying. But they forgot it too.
Now, with regard to climate change,
they don't want to bring Michigan.
The climate is changing.
So far for them, Michigan is not a state, never existed.
What's the cause, and what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation, and we've done it through natural gas and fracking.
Damn, he's just lying.
Senator, the American people go look at the record.
CO2 actually went up.
I know Joe Biden
Trump
says otherwise now, as you do.
Since Trump became president.
But both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
There are no more hurricanes today than there were 100 years ago.
And they're stronger.
But many of the climate alarmists use hurricanes and wildfires to try and sell their bill of goods of a Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put American jobs and American workers first.
Senator Harris, as the Vice President mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress. But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact.
Oh my God, get the fuck out.
That is a fact.
Dumb
Repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that
She
he
lost.
thinks about
Oh my
growing
God.
jobs,
She
which is why he
lost.
will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen
take
and
it low.
talked with
Take
the
it low.
farmers in
Say
Iowa
if Donald
whose
Trump cared
entire
about the
crops have
science,
been destroyed because
all
of
right,
floods.
then he wouldn't have got COVID.
And so
Just
Joe
say it.
believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris
That's a no.
denying
That's
the
a no.
fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record.
Republicans don't
You
believe in
yourself said
science.
repeatedly that you would ban
Democrats
fracking.
just
You were the
believe in it
first
slightly.
Senate co-sponsor of the Green
Yeah.
New Deal.
To accommodate
While Joe
their
Biden
needs, right?
denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for
It's like,
pointing
you know,
out
we believe on
the
it.
Green New Deal is on
But
their
we're not going to
campaign
act on it.
website.
What the hell?
And as USA Today said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate.
Imagine having
And you
these two
just heard the
choices.
senator say that she's going to resubmit
Yeah, like
America to
that's the thing
Paris
about it,
Climate
right? They
Accord.
just don't get
Look,
it. People
the American
like
people have
AOC.
always
They
cherished the
like.
environment. We'll continue
They
to cherish it.
think
We've
climate
made
change
great
is a
progress
problem. They
in
want to raise
reducing
taxes on the
CO2
rich,
emissions through
and yet for
American
some reason they're
innovation
so
and
scared to
development
say
of
it.
natural gas for fracking.
Yeah, but AOC
We
just
don't
said
need a
fracking is
massive
actually
$2
bad.
trillion
Yeah.
Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us
Thank
to
you, Vice
retrofit
President Pence.
4 million
Thank you, Vice
American
President
business
Pence.
buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost jobs. President Trump
Thank
is
you,
gonna
Vice
put
Just say how it's
America
going to cost
first,
jobs
he's
if someone
gonna
has
put
to get
first,
jobs to
and we're gonna
retrofit
take
the buildings.
care
Like,
of our
it's
environment and
ridiculous,
follow
man.
the science.
Thank you,
But
Vice
you know, on the
President
issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war. You lost it. What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing
Talk about the farmer.
jobs.
Yes.
Farmers have experienced bankruptcy
Exactly.
because of it. We are in a
Talk about having to pay
manufacturing
them.
recession because of it. And when we look at where
Talk
this
about how you had to
administration
pay the
has been,
farmers.
there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old, who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just
That's the
15
best
seconds
attack.
to respond, because then I want to move on to
Well, I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts.
Yo, bring up
Joe Biden
Ivanka.
vice
Like,
president
was it
for the last
communist when Ivanka opened her business
200,000
there?
manufacturing
Oh,
jobs. President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, this administration saw 500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring
500,000 in 3 years?
this
Come on.
pandemic.
That sucks.
Your Green New
Thank you,
Deal, your
Vice
massive
President
new
Pence.
mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
Susan, I just need to respond very briefly.
15
please.
seconds, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll move
Thank
on.
you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China. We have,
It's true.
as our
Finally,
next
she said it.
topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market
just say
for American
Republicans cause
agricultural
recessions.
goods. It's a potential
That's
partner
it.
in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay.
Oh my God.
Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. You know, everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American
just say
auto
it made
workers
it a
and ahead of
felony
American
to get medicine
jobs.
from
I
across
think
the
American
border.
people deserve to know that.
It's not
probably
true.
Newsweek magazine
But here you gonna
said
lie,
that-
so you
that
can lie.
Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019. More liberal than Bernie Sanders. More
hell
liberal
no.
than any of the others in the United
More
States.
It's funny, he
Liberal
fell
than
into the trap
Now,
that
with
they told
regard
him
to
not to
China,
fall into, too.
Look,
What, the mention Bernie
Susan,
Sanders?
first and foremost,
Call her radical left.
Oh,
China is to blame.
get the
for
fuck out of here.
Because she's not radical left. Yeah.
No.
And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel from China. He said it was hysterical. He said it
Thank
was
you, Vice President
xenophobic.
Pence.
But President Trump has
Vice President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time is
China.
up.
We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden. For example, they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got rid of it.
Not true.
There was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. You got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, you got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said
she could do it if she goes the direction that she needs to go in, but she's not going to do that. The United States of America prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO. He has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. That's not true.
We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President, let me give you a chance.
I'm about to fall asleep.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific, and we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military.
People don't like the Iraq
War.
War.
Our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate.
No one likes that war
took
anymore.
down their leader al-Baghdadi without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other Beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look,
President.
we destroyed the ISIS caliphate.
You did.
And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor of terrorism. President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad to do harm to Americans, President Donald Trump took him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer. Our allies are safer. And the American people know President Donald Trump will never
Thank you, Vice President
take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length because, of course, there are other topics we want to talk about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because, of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take what he said about John McCain, a great American hero. And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank you.
Joe Biden would, but Joe Biden would hold Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And I want to make sure we have a chance
to
talk about
China. She has
15 seconds because
I got to have
trying
more
to
than
keep,
that. Look,
well, I'm sorry, Vice President Pence, you've had more time than she's had so far.
The slanders against President Donald Trump regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice President
Pence. My son is a captain in the United States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
The American people deserve, Susan, the American people deserve to know.
Vice President Pence, I did not, excuse me,
Susan,
I did not create the rules for tonight.
Joe Biden.
Your campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you, which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Yes. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable, because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others, we hope she gets a fair hearing. And we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views and
Thank you,
views.
Vice President Pence.
So
your time
my hope is
up.
that when the hearing takes place,
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as president of the United States. On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And, you know, before, when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections, if they win, for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Thank you, Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator.
That's true
Harris.
leadership.
Are you sleeping?
You mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Of course not.
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed?
Yeah, you put that out there. Hell yeah.
On the Supreme Court
that you deny marijuana, I'm going to pack the shit out of that court. I would say that at heart.
Come on. Cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer.
He said that, yo.
Talk about the post office. I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed at the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to
Kamala,
don't
back out
to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Oh, damn. Voting rights.
Okay. In 1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election. And it was 27 days before the election. And a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are
go to Merrick Garland.
The American people are voting right now. And it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body
for a lifetime.
Thank you,
and
Senator
the
Harris.
People, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once again gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
now.
now.
The American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court. If they somehow
I pack it every time. As soon as the Democrat is in office, pack it.
Across this country, if you cherish our
By the time I'm done being president, 140 seats on the Supreme Court.
The Biden-Harris ticket, come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So, the Trump-Pence administration.
Just talk about Merrick Garland. That's all you have to do is talk about Merrick Garland.
Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered.
That's what I'm saying. Pack the fuck out of that court. I packed the shit out of that court.
People know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President.
To 300 seats.
In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency
you want to put Republicans?
Was shot and killed.
Oh yeah, you want to put more Republicans on a seat? 900 seats. 10,000 seats. Yo, half of the United States is a Supreme Court judge now.
Said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
Oh my God, come on.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street, so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops
yeah, we
are
know
bad
what
for
you're
good
talking
cops.
about, boy.
We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal
justice.
Man,
she just walked into it. Mike Pence, you gonna say something about that? She used to be a prosecutor. You gonna say something about that, Mike Pence?
Alive today if we did that.
Do what Trump
we
would
will
do.
require a national registry
You know what Trump
for
would do
police
right now.
officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal
The worst thing Mike Pence to say is we stand by law and order. If he says that, he lost.
Private prisons and cash bail, and we will decriminalize marijuana. And we will expunge the records of those who have been convicted
right?
of
The idea of decriminalizing
marijuana.
marijuana, right?
Leadership on a tragic issue.
She laughed at decriminalizing marijuana.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
Dumbass, Gia.
Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of innocent any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the
remind you guys, the guy who killed George Floyd went out of prison today.
I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. It was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist.
It is.
And that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities.
Oh my God, you don't want to go this route, bro.
It's a great insult.
Oh, there's a fly on his head.
Oh, there you go. Oh my God, right on time, bro.
President Trump and
oh my God, you piece of shit.
Oh, Kamala's looking at the fly.
Oh my God, even she was like, man, you piece of shit. We all know that. Oh my God.
Brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats. Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room.
God works in mysterious ways,
and then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate
floor.
This
just a sequel, like when a bird lands on
But we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done.
Say law and order.
Thank you. Your time is
the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice
Record
President
unemployment. Record investments in education, and the fight for school choice for all of our members.
Thank you, Vice
I'd
President.
like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for
God just tweeted on Twitter, the fly is me, you're welcome.
And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern.
It's funny, too. You wouldn't even notice it if his hair wasn't so white.
He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. On the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed. And on the other side, there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the President of the United States. And America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country
together. How old is Mike Pence?
And recognizes the beauty in our diversity.
Old enough to die.
And the fact that
like
we all have so much more in common than what separates us.
Oh, he's 61.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan.
74.
I appreciate that very much.
Nah. I won't say that.
I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did, comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish.
So?
This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the
He also has black friends.
But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney General of California, you increased the disproportionate incarceration of blacks in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California.
Finally.
You didn't lift a finger to pass the first step back on Capitol
smile,
Hill.
ho.
I mean, the reality is your record speaks for itself.
Well, the thing is, it hurts. It hurts. See, here's the thing, right?
Thank you, Vice President.
Those kind of attacks, they're correct. The thing is, Kamala Harris is black.
Thank you.
And
You know,
black
there is
people
no
are
more
voted for Joe
important
Biden.
issue than the final issue
He can say whatever he wants. It's not going to work.
And that is the issue
this
of the
time,
election
but is it
itself.
true?
He attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds.
What are you going to say,
Because
bro?
we're running out of time.
I appreciate
They already
that.
burned you during the fucking Democratic debate.
First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency.
Oh my God.
Our agenda
So
includes
basically
what
what
this
you said, lie and
administration
order.
has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holes.
Thank you.
Not only.
Thank you,
That-
Senator.
I would like to go through.
These are points that you made earlier in
that's
the hour, and I
already been
want to talk
tried.
about the
People already
election
done
itself
that.
before we have to
But
go.
I want to talk about
It's not gonna
the
work.
connection
What the fuck? We're
between
gonna
what
keep-
Joe and I will do and my
We're gonna
record.
keep trying the
which
same thing that
includes,
doesn't work.
I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the
She was
first,
against it at first,
to
right?
initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President on our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next?
I'd be like,
We
y'all
have
take
2
a
minutes.
gun to the White
I'll
House.
tell you,
And we kill
Joe
him.
and I are, I think, particularly
Yeah.
proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record,
Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as vice president? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life.
Yeah, I know.
And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military, we revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And
did anyone hear that?
Has only grown stronger.
What did he say? That's not supposed to happen.
When you talk about accepting the outcome of the election,
he said they elected conservatives to every part of our court.
I must tell you,
judges are supposed to be impartial.
Your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election.
Judges out here, guys. Get
them
out of here.
When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States,
get you out of here.
The FBI actually spied on President Trump.
We didn't know he already selected what, 170?
There were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed. And then, Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call. It was successful. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. And we have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along?" And then she added, "Your examples could make all the difference to bring us together," end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. And in America, we believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world.
Unless you're a minority.
But I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States, one very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight.
That's
but
a lie.
when the debate is over, We come together as Americans.
So
And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across
we
this
can't
country.
get along.
So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have
Are there
government
any
as good as
closing
our
statements?
people. And the American people
No,
each and
they are
every
asking me the
day
last question.
love a good debate. We love a good argument, but we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you,
in
Vice
times of
President.
need, and we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run
We don't care.
is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier.
No one cares.
It's so
Now
troubled
going
him
into
and
these
upset him like it
stories.
did all of us, because there was that kind of hate and division.
Oh my God.
What propelled Joe to run for president was
But
to see
just say
over the
that
course
Jesus
of the last
told you
4
to run,
years,
bro.
what
I know,
Brecklin
right?
described has been happening. Joe has a
You do what
long-standing
Donald Trump did.
reputation of working across the
Got
aisle,
Colby and he said,
working in a
Joe,
bipartisan way.
run for president.
And that's what he's
And
going to do
still
as
Bernie
president.
Sanders elections.
Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up
Get the fuck
and
out of
fighting for their dignity.
Didn't
I
he?
mean, you have to know
didn't-
Joe's story
didn't
to
he
know that
stand
Joe has known pain,
on the Senate to
he has known
cut Social
suffering,
Security for people?
and he has known love.
Yeah.
There you go. That's Joe.
And so,
That's Joe Biden
Brecklin,
right
when
there.
you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright.
He liked to bring people together,
will
except
be
the
because
part
of
where
your
he wanted to
leadership,
stop force
And it will
busing.
be because we fight for each
Bro,
person's
people already
voice
did a flag.
through their vote, and we get engaged in
People
this
already
election
painted a
because
flag with a
you have the
with
ability
a
through
communist
your
flag behind
work
it.
and through
Yeah.
eventually your
Wow.
vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all,
there
our
you go,
thanks
guys.
to all
That
the
was the debate.
Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone
Yeah, right.
who is battling COVID-19.
Yeah,
The
right.
second presidential
Wink,
debate
wink.
is next week on October 15th, a town hall style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us then. Good evening.
We'll be there. Boo.
So there you have it. Two candidates largely refraining from the fireworks, certainly a contrast to President Trump's performance last week in that first presidential debate. Tonight, it was much more civil. Both candidates clearly did their best to dodge important
We get it. We get it, boy.
Page, questions that they didn't
I don't want to hear that fool.
He asked a very good question, Susan Page, I must point out. And Mike
Anyways,
Pence
Kenneth,
in
what do
the
you thought about the debate?
also learned that it's nearly impossible to put a
Say what?
Was it all you hoped for?
when it comes to coronavirus.
The debate?
More than 210,000
You there?
Americans dead.
Okay.
It's all I can vote for. Expected. It was a lot more boring.
Yeah, it was what everyone wanted from the Trump and Biden debate, but all right. So that was the debate.
I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, people have already started voting. No one really cares about what the vice president has to say. Vice presidential candidates have to say, or the vice president. It was boring. It was real boring.
I mean, yeah. I'll be since the beginning. We saw what we knew what we're gonna be expecting from both candidates. We know that Mike Pence is the kind of candidate that a lot of Republicans wanted, right? That candidate who just likes to take it serious, has good decorum. He's presidential in a way, quote unquote. He's a favor of the Wall Street, just like Kamala Harris. Wall Street or any other corporation is like, you know what, we'll take Pence or Kamala. They're both good. We actually prefer them than Biden and Trump. So there you have it. Like, most of the answers are more likely what most people wanted to hear from some kind of presidential candidates. Boring, non-direct answers. That, like, for example, Kamala kept bringing it back to yeah, like
story time with Kamala.
I've been doing this all my life. I've done that. I've been
No
the
one
first. I
cares.
was like,
Yeah. Like that's the thing that so amazes me about this, right? It's not even just Kamala Harris, but Mike Pence. Mike Pence was just stupid, right? He was just like, come on, bro. Like we're in the middle of COVID. Everyone knows what's up. You've been getting the blame for it for the last like 6 months. Why are you even trying to pretend like it's not your fault? That was the thing about this. It's like all they really had to do to win was talk about COVID-19. That's it.
yeah,
No matter what they talked about, just talk about COVID-19. All right, because that's the thing that people want to know about. Right? Kamala Harris could have won in a heartbeat if she was like, you know what? If you win, we're gonna make sure that all Americans can stay in their houses, can feed their families, blah blah. You didn't even have to get details, right? Because that's where people are right now, right? The CDC expanded the moratorium or evictions until the end of December. Okay, that's as much as you got. That means people are scared as hell because, like I said, even though they can't get evicted, they still owe all the rent from March, if they haven't paid in March or April, I should say, all the way to December. So if they couldn't pay rent the first month, imagine the rent over 9 months all stacked up.
Yeah.
That they have to pay for.
Yeah, and then she didn't touch on anything, related to that topic alone, and that's something that if Joe Biden and the Democrats win, are gonna be passed down to them. The first month in office, they're gonna have to deal with that directly. Obviously, based on if they win the Senate and they have the House of Representatives, hopefully they passed something to help them out directly. We both know what Nancy Pelosi did, right?
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, I own apartment properties. I actually invested in some of them. Therefore, I'm not gonna allow people to just, get bailed out or get paid, the months they owe."
Yeah.
If anything, we want people to get out of there. We want so we can increase the rent in our properties.
And another thing she messed up on was she didn't properly call out Trump's tax scam. Like you have to remember when they passed that bill in 2017, that thing was hated. People did not like it, Republicans or Democrats. They were like, if we're in a deficit, like you said we were, why are you giving tax? Right? But the good thing that Kamala Harris did was she did attack him on the economy, which is good because that's one of Trump's strengths is the economy. People believe he's doing great for the economy, even though he's objectively not. I don't know why people think that, but
she wasn't really clear about it. Like she didn't specify how the economy is and why we are in the situation. She just went to like general topics.
But that doesn't matter though. All you have to do is talk about the economy, right? Just keep people's mind on it.
Yeah, I understand.
And then one thing Mike Pence didn't do was he didn't make it seem like Donald Trump knew what he was doing. And that was the one thing that you had to get from Donald Trump is make him look sane. He didn't really do it. He just kept trying to like justify it.
It was just Mike Pence did what every other Republican politician has done until this day. All right, I think just yesterday, I think in Arizona that people are battling for the government seat.
Yeah,
and both of them, a candidate that supported Bernie Sanders, went head to head against the Republican candidate who already has been, in the seat for Arizona for a while.
Right, de facto.
And she came. I mean, I think he called her out and said, "Look, do you openly support Donald Trump?" And then she couldn't say his name. She didn't even dare to say his name. She just said that she would do anything to make this country better. That's the only thing she kept saying. Like, and then it's like, no, that's not the question. The question is, do you support Donald Trump and all the things he has done? And she said she just couldn't not say that she supports him. But immediately she just rebutted, saying after we getting pressure so many times, she's like, oh, but remember you supported Bernie Sanders during the primary election, and then everyone's like, so what? Like, even himself like, so like.
Right, and that's the thing, right? It's like it's one thing that people have to realize that Democrats hold the more popular positions. Okay, Democrats are a bigger party than the Republicans. All right. The reason why Republicans keep winning is they keep gerrymandering. All right, they keep cheating, and I'm surprised that Kamala didn't bring that up. Like, especially with DeJoy and what he's doing to the post office, like that's a travesty, right? And it was like I don't get it. I don't know what this debate was supposed to be for. Like I said, Kamala started off really strong, then she kind of went average. For what you expect a Republican to do. Mike Pence was average. But I think Kamala Harris was slightly better.
But that's the given. We all know that she had the advantage of, putting pressure to the fire against Donald. Because Mike Pence is the yes guy, right?
Not
He's a yes
only
man.
that, but that was the thing, right? It was like I was telling you, because she's Kamala Harris, she had to, because she's a woman, she had to like make sure he didn't run her over. You know what I'm saying? Or else people will view her as weak. And I think she did that. So I think she achieved her own personal objectives, and I think she achieved a good amount of the objectives.
Yeah, but you could think that to Mike Pence. Mike Pence, like he could be everything, but he did behave accordingly.
But the thing
even if he lied his ass off, right? And he
the problem. See, the thing with Mike Pence is that's not what he needed to do. What he needed to do was he needed to essentially protect Trump, if that makes sense. He didn't really have to do it because while Kamala was hitting Trump, she wasn't hitting him in the right places for the time. But even when she was hitting him, Mike Pence, he didn't really do a good job of defending it. Because the thing is that he talks about the swine flu from 2009, and that was like what, 7 years before Trump took office, almost a decade.
Yeah.
So no one cares, right?
Like, I don't know why he brought that shit. That's like
right. And then on top of that, it was just like he's like, "Oh, 2 million people could have died from the swine flu." It was like, but they didn't. You know what I'm saying? But he didn't die from the swine flu, right? Which is a good thing. That was like one of the missed opportunities. That was one of the weakest parts of Kamala Harris's defense, was that she didn't take the low hanging fruit, and in some cases that was a good thing. But in that time when he said that, like, oh, 2 million people could have died, she could have just said, but they didn't. More people were infected, less people died, and yet under Trump, more people are infected, less people are infected, yet more people died because Trump sucks. You see what I'm saying? Like, she could have easily taken that, but she didn't.
Yeah, I don't know why she missed out a couple of opportunities here and there just to be more direct,
right?
With her answers and her comebacks and whatnot, but she refused to do it for the sake of decorum, and she also did, like you said, she didn't want to look like a total B.
Yeah.
So I understand that she didn't close that line. She wanted to. You could tell by her face that she wanted to just say something right there, right? And a lot of people were like on Twitter, "Oh my God, my queen! Yes, man, yes, queen! Go out there, give her the face, give her the." Like, I want to go on a rant against you. Just wait until my turn is. I was like, okay, shit. Like, you understand? I knew that was gonna happen, right? All this, like, the honey. I don't know what they call themselves. The people who follow Kamala Harris, like the honeybees, or I don't know what the fuck they call themselves. Yeah, but no, those people are just like a plague on Twitter, bro. Like, if you get in an argument with one, you get 100 people replying you all the time. 100.
I mean, that's the thing, because right?
People who love Kamala Harris is just like, oh, she's black. Why you going against her because
she's black and Asian?
She's black and no, but people are just automatically like, oh. First of all, she's a woman. She's an accomplished woman, and second of all, she's black. You're racist. They directly started like attacking you on the fact that she's a woman and you're misogynistic or something. But that's beside the point. Like right now, going back to the debate itself, she was reluctant to attack them directly. She held herself back, and whenever and sometimes
she attacked them.
Yeah, she did, but not in the best way we wanted to. But she did point out some things.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying. She didn't take the low hanging fruit, but she did attack them in terms of the coronavirus and the economy, which was good. Because the thing is that See, I think what's going to be more impactful was Joe Biden's debate with Donald Trump, because that's who you're voting for, the president.
Yeah.
And that was a few times where Joe Biden, the strong moments Joe Biden had were really strong. The strong moments Kamala Harris had, they were strong, but they weren't as strong as Joe Biden. Probably because Donald Trump was so weak.
Yeah, probably, yeah, because Donald Trump was such a presence on the stage that whenever Joe Biden did throw a jab here and there, it was more dramatic. It was like, oh my God, finally! Like, I want to do that.
Because that was the thing, right? Was that I think that's what mattered the most, was that because Donald Trump, he tries to bully people, right? But the fact that Joe Biden was like, you're not going to do that to me. That's all he really needed to do. Yeah, it's a low bar, but that's how you negate.
But it didn't come. Okay, he tried to do that, but
no, he did it.
No, he did it. He tried to do it on his own way, but it came off like you're strong. It's just like the benefit of the doubt was in your favor. Everyone was watching the debate. Yeah, the Biden Trump debate was on Joe Biden's favor from the beginning, and he was like, "We all know that he's gonna be lying."
I think during the debate, I think Joe Biden did a good job of keeping his cool, because that's what I told you right before the debate, right? Was that if Donald Trump can't bully you, all the things he does on stage, is gonna make him look crazy, and that's exactly what happened.
But that's what I'm saying. Like there was such, like, we discussed this in the last the conversation we had after the debate, that there was such a low bar for both of them that they didn't have to do much. It's just like, you don't have to behave like him. Act a little bit accordingly, which he did in some way, and people were like, okay, I'll favor. He's not retarded like people were saying. He's not like melting down on the stage like people were saying as well. Therefore,
fair, right? There's a larger argument there that the reason the bar was so low was because the American people kind of put that bar.
Yeah, people
people were talking about actual issues instead of is Joe Biden crazy?
Bro, come on,
he would have had to prove that.
Come on, bro. Like, we have Donald Trump. People are already tired
of
hearing from him. People are already tired of being depressed. To the point it's like, damn, like, we are in a point in our lives where there's a snowball effect going down the hill, and every other month or so we get something worse, and something bad happening, either directly from the Trump administration or indirectly between what's going on all around the world, right? Whether if it's war, whether if it's climate change, whether if it's some kind of other catastrophe going on. And we're trying to deal with it. We just turn around and look at our fucking leaders and it's like, okay, so what are you guys gonna want to do? And then they're like, oh, we're not gonna do anything, or we're gonna do things even worse. We're gonna contribute to make things even harder for everyone, And people get depressed because, like, oh my God, our leaders are not doing what they're supposed to. And that's on both sides of the aisle, obviously. Democrats are doing their own part of, not being part of the solution, or being part of the problem, right? So, so when it comes to the debate with Kamala Harris and Pence, it went as planned. Obviously, Kamala was gonna have the advantage of bringing Pence the questions of, look, you guys did a terrible job on the economy. You guys did a terrible job handling the coronavirus. That's a given. And obviously, Mike Pence, being Mike Pence, he brought up some talking points that Donald Trump already has said on the debate stage before, or in a press conference that he has every day, which is like, oh yeah, we did a great job in the beginning. We did what we're supposed to do. Lies. And the Kamala Harris, the only thing she had to maintain her proportion. Whenever she was her turn, she could have just said, no, you guys didn't. A lot of people are dying. The response was weak, was not adequate, but she didn't want to go into much specifics, because, or else she will entangle herself in another situation. That's where Mike Pence fucked it up, I think, because he could literally just came in and say, look, all this, what are you guys gonna do? Can you tell me more specific about your plan? You know how, like, when the turn was given to her for her to explain Joe Biden's plan for the coronavirus, she immediately just said some BS, right?
She said, like, oh, we're gonna make sure that everyone is taken care of. make sure no one's kid. But they never really gave details.
Yeah, like
that was the problem.
But Donald Trump could go and said that.
Yeah.
Right, and it's like, yo, that's my plan, bro. What are you saying?
I think that's
what Mike Pence
was that Mike Pence, because it's famous at this point that Donald Trump doesn't have a plan.
Yeah, for anything, no for healthcare.
So I was like, what was Mike Pence gonna say? Yeah, our plan is to make sure people don't get out of their houses either. Like, it would have been ridiculous at that point.
Yeah. So like, obviously, I think the most precious moment was the one time where I think Mike Pence was just talking out of his ass, and then a fly came over and just was there for like a couple of minutes or so. And everyone went crazy online. It's like, oh my God.
That's the thing, right? It's like Mike Pence to attack Biden had to attack Obama, right? And that's not going to work out well because Obama is one of the most well-liked presidents in history, in American history. Like, he's right up there with like legendary historical presidents, right? And so a lot of his attacks on Biden was weak. First, he didn't even really attack Kamala like that. He did on some cases, but most of the time he didn't. And when he attacked Biden, he attacked Obama. And the thing is, with Obama, because here's the thing, right? When the Bush era happened, right, people remember things being completely like shit, right? Because you had the financial collapse from 2007, 8, right? And then Obama came in, and everything, even though it wasn't true, everything looked amazing, right? It was like, oh yeah, this is great. I can't believe it. This is fantastic. He fixed everything, yada, yada, yada. And then you go to Trump, and then everything is like shit again. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, in comparison to the two presidents that followed him, right? Obama is made to look way better than he actually is, or actually was, right? And so by attacking Obama, he's essentially like, all his arguments are made weaker because it's like you said about the virus, right? COVID-19, 7 million people infected, 200,000 died. Swine flu, 60 million infected.
Like,
I don't know how many people died.
Like about 20,000 or less than that, I think, as the number for people who die for the swine flu. Yeah, but it wasn't like a big deal. Like, they had a couple numbers here in Baja California and around Mexico, I think near the border, but it wasn't like it affected a lot of people. Like, it was a talked about issue at a certain point, and it got to where people were like, "Oh, is a swine flu going to be a thing?" But then out of nowhere, just like,
yeah. So it was actually so 13,000 people died from the swine flu in the United States, 60 million infected, 7 million infected from the coronavirus, 200,000 dead. That's not a good argument. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's not a good argument. See, the swine flu was worse. Okay, but if so many more people got infected, how come less people died? She could have just said that. Well, Mike Pence is right. Swine flu isn't as deadly as the coronavirus, but at the same time, that's to say that 2 million people could have died. That's not a good argument. In fact, people hate that argument so much that there's been polls done on that argument to where it showed that everyone hated the argument. Whereas, like, well, 200,000 is bad, but it could have got worse. We did a decent job. That's not too bad, right? Everyone's like, what the hell are you talking about? You're the president. You need to do better than this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, in fact, most of the positions that Kamala took were the populist positions.
Yeah, but it was easy for her to like just say, oh, look, 200,000 people, actually 210,000 people had died out of coronavirus. So every day as it goes on, you're doing a bad job as it is, right? Your response is inadequate. It's not doing what it's supposed to do, right? If anything, more people are becoming the virus is spreading even more. Here in California, we have about 800,000 cases already. At a certain point, I think about 1 month and a half ago, our numbers were like about in maybe low 50,000s, right? So in a matter of a month and a half, it's just
most likely because we didn't have testing.
Yeah, but it's just people, because people at a certain point were just at home, and then everyone just like, you know what, everything is okay now, and it just began to just go out there and go about their way, do the daily tasks they do every day, right? So that's when people began to get they began to get confronted with the virus itself individually, right, all around the California,
Right.
And now, like they pronounced in the debate, like more states the numbers are increasing by the days, right? And more people begin to get infected. More people are dying. I mean, the numbers might not be like big, like they were before, right? But their numbers are continuing to increase, right? So the response from the Trump administration has been one of the worst, and I think it was right for Kamala Harris to point that out, and then for Mike Pence to say, "Oh, what about the swine flu?" I was like, "Bro, the swine flu," and then he also brought Ebola, right? I think at some point.
But see, but here's the thing: the fact is that's what I was saying. Like, it's a weak response because how many people remember the swine flu? You didn't have to go to lockdown over the swine flu. And yeah, over 60 million people got affected.
It actually was like the main topic for like at least less than a week.
Right, because no one cared. Right? Because Obama did a good job. Or at least you can say he did a good job.
I mean,
I don't know
had
the
that task force that he put in.
Yeah,
That
another thing he got rid of, and he bragged about getting rid of it, and that was the thing, right? It's that it comes out to this, right? If you're a voter who are actually on the fence about who to vote for, right? Even after the last debate, then hopefully this convinced you. If you but otherwise you already knew who you were gonna vote for. In fact, I think before this debate, the
most
vast
people already
knew who they were gonna.
I mean, most people I think already made up their minds. A lot of people are voting by the ballot already. And
yeah, I've got my mail-in ballot. I filled it out today.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw. I think even Josh voted already, right? With you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people already made up their minds, and that's why in the polls you have like Biden by up almost like more than 10 points, right? About 16 points or whatnot. And that's the first time ever that a president's that high. I disclosed the race like 2 weeks from now. And I mean, the debate itself, it went as we both predicted it was going to be. They both held their ground. They both gave some jabs here and there. They tried at least, and they both also did not answer the questions directly. Right? They went into these big answers and whatnot. The answer and going just like any other politician would have done. Right? And also, it doesn't really add much to the. What way the violence is gonna go. It seems like it's going this way, and this debate just made it going this way a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right. I think Kamala Harris is what we expected it to be. She is the darling of Wall Street. She's the darling of most in U.S. industries or U.S. corporations like her. So.
She's a market. That's the thing. Like what the industries want are marketable, marketable to young people, politicians. That's what they want. They're trying to make sure that when the generations change again, right, and you go from one set of group that has a lot of power to the next, that they can keep the same ideas flowing. And so they saw Obama was extremely successful at that. And Kamala Harris wasn't as successful, but pretty decently successful. Like I said, people, instead of talking about her politics, are talking about her skin color, talking about her gender, talking about her sex. They're talking about her as a minority woman versus a person who was not a prosecutor and a person who has no plans on changing anything significant. Like I said, from day one, like she complains about Steve Mnuchin. Steve Mnuchin would be in jail if it wasn't for her. Literally, if it wasn't for her. She chose not to prosecute him here in California after her office found that he had significant fraud to the point where, they could prosecute him and get a conviction. And she's like, nah, it's cool. I'll let him go. And Steve Mnuchin donated to her campaign, the only Democrat he ever contributed to that same year. So if she didn't like Steve Mnuchin so much, she should have put him in jail.
Yeah, those are the things that I thought Pence were gonna bring in. I mean, he kind of brought up her.
He can't because Steve Mnuchin is
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of things you could brought up to to put Kamala Harris against the wall, but you're a Republican candidate. You're like more in the mud. You have more mud in your boat than anything else. You're like you're more in deep with corporations than Democrats at this point.
That's the thing, right? It's like that's how Wall Street went. I mean, Steve Mnuchin has connections to Joe Biden now because of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump because they're just friends.
Yeah,
and so it's like, what the hell?
That's what I said. Like this. That's why at the beginning of the debate I said it's like this feels much like a formality for everyone else. It's like, you know what? Let's just move on from this debate and say whatever you want to say. It's not gonna change the outcome. If anything, it's just gonna reinforce it for some people. Yep. Mike Pence, he tried his best to protect himself, his image, and obviously to support Donald Trump as much as he can. He's great at acting. I think Mike Pence has done a pretty good job supporting Donald Trump because he's actually being, I think, the most loyal, guy. Because,
there was stories a couple months ago. I think it was actually a year ago, saying that they wanted to declare Trump crazy so he could become the president.
Yeah.
Other than that,
earlier today when there was announced that Trump got the COVID thing, I think Mike Pence said that God has put that on his way, so he become president one day, But it is what it is. I think that claim came back to bite his ass once Trump came back, like God was, he's the chosen one.
And that's another thing Kamala Harris should have pressed on, which is that they don't know what they're doing, and one way to illustrate that was he said don't wear a mask. He said he doesn't wear a mask. He's made Joe Biden fun of Joe Biden not wearing a mask, and he got COVID.
Actually, I was surprised they didn't talk about that at all.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the crazy thing about it.
So that's the most fresh shit that you could actually point out when it comes to the COVID and the way they handling COVID. But that's
even Trump himself got it. That's how bad he is at handling.
Yeah, that's the whole debate right here. Obviously, we could go into what's going to happen for next week because there's a scheduled debate right for the 15.
Yeah,
and it seems like there's two things might happen, right? Either Donald Trump is going to get worse when it comes to the health of dealing with the coronavirus, because a lot of health experts and doctors who had dealt with patients with COVID, they had said, look, if he really has COVID and he is dealing with like mild symptoms and whatnot, according to all our data, where people have gotten COVID and they have gone through the process of healing from COVID, it's either going to get worse for him or
better,
or he's going to get better. There's no way that he got better in 2 days unless the drugs they gave him was so strong that he felt better. But eventually the COVID symptoms are gonna come back and bite him in the back.
And that's the thing, right? Because if he gets on that stage and he's not better, GG. Because this whole thing is about projecting strength. If he's up there, he's like barely can breathe.
Yeah,
he's have to catch his breath every 5 seconds. And if Joe Biden is just standing there fine, it's probably a wrap.
Yeah,
that was one of the reasons why Franklin Roosevelt didn't want to use a wheelchair or a walking cane whenever he to a speech. But it turns out people didn't care once they got to know
him. But so we'll see what happens with Donald Trump next week. Obviously, they're monitoring him 24/7. There are things going on and popping out every day. We just heard that that the talks for giving another COVID aid response is back on the talks. The negotiations back on the table since Donald Trump realized that he fucked up when he said, let's cancel the negotiations for another stimulus check. And immediately the market, the what's it called? The stock market went down. After he realized that at night, immediately he said, "No, let's go back to the negotiations, and let's give people the $1,200 they need."
Yeah, that's the weirdest part about it, right? Because Donald Trump's strength, like I said, was on the economy.
Yeah.
You believed that he was doing a good job on an economy. So to sit there and tell everyone, "Nah, F the economy," it was really weird. I don't know why he would do that.
So immediately when he said that at night, the stocks just bounced back immediately after they opened up at 1:00 in the morning. Yeah. So at 2:00 they went down like crazy by 30 points, but 1:00 in the morning the next day it just had bounced back. I was like, this is what happens when you have someone like him. He realized, oh shit, I fucked up. But it is what it is. I think
this is probably the only way you'll see another stimulus check, is Democrats and Republicans gonna realize if we don't pass this, all of us might be out. right before election time.
Yeah, more likely. And it seems like a lot of like progressive. I think some progressive candidates is still running for election. Against some Republicans and whatnot, and I, if you're voting Democrat, go ahead and vote down the ballot as well. Don't forget about that; it's actually very important because we want to take back the Senate and the House of Representatives, just like we did in 2008, and now we have to pressure them to do what they didn't do in 2008, right? And don't repeat yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that was funny that you still haven't heard talk about is corruption. Corruption, a lot of Americans believe that's the number one problem in the United States is corruption. And you haven't heard a single debate about it. You haven't heard a single candidate bring it up. It's hilarious. Yeah. Right. Right, exactly. That's the thing. It's not gonna happen. See, here's the thing, right? And I was noticing this as I was voting. It was really annoying. Was that a lot of times you just had Democrats versus Republicans, and you had Democrats versus Republican, and like neither of them will be good at all. Like you'd be like, "Yo, I don't want either of them in office," but there's no other choices. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you have other choices for the presidency, right? Which had the most choices, ironically. But for like local offices, a lot of them we only have one choice. There's like literally just one person running for the office. It was just like, who am I supposed to vote for? This one guy. Who else am I gonna vote for? You know what I'm saying? It's really crazy. He was the shield for he was the shield for the establishment. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I said, it's like I said before, man. It's just that people it's funny how people continue to try to find ways to guilt trip people into voting a certain way, right? instead of thinking about why is it like this, like why is it that like people say it all the time. I think what Bill Maher said it was that it's the Bernie Sanders people again. It's the Bernie Bros because Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. Now he gets 2 seats. Donald Trump gets to fill 2 seats, and it was just like one. If, like I said, if it was about falling in line, why didn't you just fall in line behind Bernie Sanders if you knew we weren't going to fall behind Hillary Clinton, right?
Yeah.
Because you're the one preaching, fall in line, so fall in line. 2, why do you have a system that says, hey, I hope this person doesn't die at this time? Like, it's like, come on, really? Maybe that means you shouldn't have lifetime appointments, right?
Yeah.
And then 3, and this is most important, is why is it that the court can be flipped politically at any given time? That you're telling me that these guys can take a law that everyone supported, that shaped the country, and just repeal it at any time? It's like clearly there needs to be a fix between the Congress, because the supreme lawmaking body of the United States is supposed to be the Congress and the Senate, right? The legislature. But for some reason, people are like, oh, the Supreme Court is better. Like, we have to be careful of the Supreme Court. It's like, no, F the Supreme Court. If they can strike down laws, right, for no reason besides the way they feel, right? Because abortion has already been established by another court, another Supreme Court, and now people are afraid that this Supreme Court is going to strike down another Supreme Court's decision. There's clearly something that needs to be fixed, right? And I think it also comes down to the inaction in the legislature, right, where you have such blocking, such a extreme amount of blocking each other that all the decisions have to come down to the judicial branch. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's too much. That means there's something wrong and it needs to be fixed. And you might have to. I think the only way to do it is you probably have to amend the Constitution. And I think what needs to be fixed is corruption, because a lot of times, a lot of things people don't talk about is that the Supreme Court is corrupt. Like, a lot of these people, like Clarence Thomas and even Antonin Scalia before he died, were seen hanging out at Koch brother fundraisers.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, what are you doing? What the hell? I thought these guys were supposed to be impartial.
Yeah.
Like, they're clearly partisan. So it's like there needs to be some balance here. Like, there needs to stop. We need to get rid of the 2-party system ultimately.
Yeah.
But we also need to get money out of politics.
Yeah.
Like, unless you get those 2 things, like, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and it obviously is a hard battle.
Yeah.
Because we've been dealing with this since 2016 or even before. But 2016, that's when it gathered some fire behind it. And now we came to 2020. People thought it was going to be different, but we were close. But again, like... I think
it's mostly a marketing battle, right? Because the way it's marketed, right? When it comes to liberals, right? I'm not going to lie, you have a lot of, like, stuck-up liberals who, like, they think they know...
politics,
like, how to do things, and they'll do it wrong, right?
Yeah.
So they'll frame everything like super complicated for no reason. It's like, if it was me, if I had an idea, I would just be like, look, you want to get rid of the Electoral College? Don't say, let's get rid of the Electoral College. People are not going to accept that, right? You have to say something like, yo, do you believe the majority in a democracy should decide the law? Yeah? Okay, cool. Sign this paper. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because most people will agree with that because it's true. That's how democracy.
Because most people think it's direct democracy what we have, and this is not the truth at all. Like, we don't have direct democracy, right? We have representative democracy where a couple of people who happen to be the college, the people who vote for the what's it called?
The electors?
Yeah, the electoral college. The people who vote for those votes are the people who are literally deciding the election in a way, right?
Right.
So we don't have direct democracy. None of the majority of votes win the presidency or or actually every other election, right? So that's why you do say, like, there's something, the system itself, there needs to be a huge change on how we elect our, most of our representatives, and how we go about, how we go about the process of democracy, or how we, um, you know, what's the word? I forget about it.
What?
How we realize democracy in this country in a way. You know what I mean? How we go about it, right? Because that's not democracy at all, right?
Right.
When other people are deciding who to vote for.
Yeah. And on top of that, it's like there's no attention. Attention is rarely called to the fact that Republicans keep cheating. No consequences for it. Like it's just like it's like needs to be a law that says like you have to put a voting place proportional to each, how many people live in a district, right?
Yeah.
And it's like because like you see it all the time. Republicans don't go out, remove. I think it was in Georgia or Alabama, one of those two, where they literally closed like all the DMVs in the black majority districts. And it was like so crazy. Even Republicans was like, "Oh shit, that looks like a little racist." Like you had to close down 100 DMVs, and all of them were in a black area. Like you couldn't find a single one in a white area. Yeah. And everyone was just like, "That's kind of crazy. Like that's ridiculous. People should be voting and be able to register to vote." But a constant thing that happens, like I said, like Republicans go out there, they do it, and they say voter fraud. It's because of voter fraud. Blah blah blah. Democrats, they go out there and they're just like, oh, there's no voter fraud. It was like, don't let them frame the argument. Just say, hey, they're trying to take away your right to vote. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you have to say. Like, oh, they don't like democracy. Because they're gonna keep doing extreme stuff like this.
Yeah. The thing is, you have to get down and dirty. Not all the time, but you have to get down and
no. The thing is, it's not getting dirty.
Not dirty.
It's just they're framing it it's too much of an enigma.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? Like they're putting too much into the things that they need to say. Like if they're attacking it, you don't need to make this whole argument about, oh, see, they took it out of the black people area. They're racist. They're blah blah. No, you say, look, they don't want you to vote. That's why they keep removing DMVs. That's it. That's all you have to say.
Making it as simple as possible.
Right.
Yeah. I understand, and it's a hard battle because obviously they have different outlets of mainstream communications, right, where they just could propagate their own.
And Democrats don't know how to go on attack.
They do know, but they just don't want to.
Oh yeah, that's true. They went on attack versus Bernie Sanders.
They don't want to. Yeah, what the fuck? Bernie Sanders was like an organized, eloquent, fucking kamikaze shit. I was like, fuck. Yeah. They did that, pull out all the rug. They put all the resources. I was like, we need to get this motherfucker out.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck if we re-elect Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, so they did so because they also knew that it was like, bro, people don't like Donald Trump, and this one is actually serious, right?
Yeah.
And so any fucking like dead body will actually win. And so far, the tests are pretty much guaranteeing them that yeah, any fucking asshole could go against Donald Trump would actually have a really good shot at winning. And you got Joe Biden open the polls by 16 points.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's exactly what's going on right now. Anyways, guys, I think we already went about 3 hours of live streaming. Yeah. So that was the debate, pretty much it.
2.5 hours.
There's nothing much to like to discuss. Like we really know what we're waiting for both parts of both Democrats and Republicans. We knew what they were gonna bring down to the table.
Exactly.
It wasn't the most excited, the most dramatic debate. Obviously, Donald Trump and Biden took that prize home that they debated the first time. And I don't think they're going to have another debate if Donald Trump gets worse. But if he does get better, best believe that everyone will question their health. Hopefully, they do the same thing that they did to Bernie Sanders when he had that surgery. All right. Like, oh, are you okay? Are you dying on stage right now? Right. But obviously, they're not going to do that with Donald Trump, right?
Right.
All right. So, but yeah, thanks guys for staying tuned to whoever's watching this night with us. Thank you. Make sure to check out our podcast. We just released that yesterday. We talked about a little bit more about the COVID situation with Donald Trump, Melania's leaked tapes, as well as the recent debates that we covered last week and whatnot. We talked about a little bit of that, as well as what's going to happen later. You could, like, if you're just watching this right now, you could go back and you could watch the whole debate and you could hear us just talk about it. But I just suggest you just to come back to the beginning of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, any last thoughts, Kenneth?
The next presidential debate is supposed to be on the 15th. Hopefully, Donald Trump feels better so he can participate, or he might use an excuse to get out of it, or he might feel bad enough not to participate.
Because I think we heard that. I think Joe Biden's gonna have a town hall instead.
Okay, so they pretty much sacrificed it then.
Yeah, I think. I mean,
it could be a blessing or a curse for Trump. It really depends.
Yeah. So,
but like I said, they probably already made their mind up.
Yeah, if they have a town hall, probably we might stream it. We don't know yet. They had a town hall like a couple of days ago about it. So we never.
70 million people. That's how many people watched the last debate. 70 million.
70 million.
So 7-0. That's a lot of people. That's a good chunk of the voting.
A lot of people were watching this one as well. I mean, I think a lot of people fall asleep, but it's okay. It was meant to be that way, and people thought us, okay, this is the debate we needed it, all right? But imagine having that debate that Joe Rogan wants to host, 6 hours. God.
I mean, people like Joe Rogan better. Like, that's just what it is.
Maybe I'm more entertaining, but I guess I could barely like listen to a 2-hour podcast sometimes. Like, nah. Not for that, just okay, you get it. Like, there's not much to say. You know what I mean,
right?
About the political things, unless they go into like that, like what you thought when you were a kid, or something like that, or they go into some other jokes, which I think Joe Biden is not gonna be able to understand, and Donald Trump as well, but he's gonna be pretend that he did.
Yeah,
and there you go. We go. But I don't know how if Joe Rogan were to debate it, I don't know how he's gonna be dealing with both of them like that, because he doesn't know him like the way. You know what I mean? He's gonna try. They're both gonna try to like, oh yeah, I'm cool and you're not, but whatever. It is what it is. If it happens. I don't think it's gonna happen with the COVID stuff that now Trump has. I don't think that's gonna ever happen. Especially now that we're like 2 weeks away from like the actual election. So I think that's mostly down the drain.
We're like a month away.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks guys for tuning tuned. See you until the next live stream, or maybe until the next podcast you're able to listen. Peace. Good night.